Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and Rick and Morty Season 4, Episode 4 just made whatever list Mr. Jellybean is on a whole lot longer. Nothing needs to be getting longer right now, because Claw and Hoarder Special Ricktim's Morty is smut. I enjoyed it, but just so that I don't end up on any lists, it's smut. I don't think there's any confusion over this episode's commentary about dragons being masturbatory escapism, but there is one mystery tucked away in the B plot. What the hell is that cat all about? What cryptic horror show did Rick and Jerry see that shook them to their core? And will it matter in future episodes? Later in this analysis, we'll discuss this episode with special guests. Let's quickly dig into the dark secret of Claw and Hoarder Special Ricktim's Morty in this episode of Ricksplained. Warnings both for spoilers and triggers. Like Jerry this episode, no person who's young or young at heart should look too deeply into this, because memory wipes do not exist in our world, sadly. Okay, as Rick, Morty, and Summer deal with slut dragons, the B story of this episode comes off a bit tame on the surface until we learn what it's really about. Jerry discovers a talking cat, voiced by Matthew Broderick, who simply wants to be taken to Florida for some partying and volleyball. But in the end, Rick learns that all that good timing is a lie. Scans the cat's mind to learn the truth.
See the truth. What in the... Oh, son of a bitch! Jerry, don't!
I want to see.
No, you do not!
Christ! Rick sends the cat away as he and Jerry scream through psychotic breakdowns. Rick actually nearly shoots himself in the mouth, but then he wipes Jerry's memory so that Jerry won't have to live with the horrible knowledge of this cat's origin. And then later in the post-credit scene, the cat encounters the dragon.
Is there a reason you can speak?
Yeah, and I'm ashamed of it.
Then speak of it no more. Do you wish to eat? Maybe bond a little?
Yeah, I could bond. How long does it take you to fly to Florida?
So according to the writers of this episode, the mystery cat was a nod to animated kids movies in which animals could talk, and it's never really explained.
The cat subplot was an attempt to just have fun. The cat represents that voice in your head in the writer's room. It's like, you're overthinking it, just have fun.
That came from it was Disney movies like Oliver and Company or anything like that. Like, they never really explained why the cats can talk.
The cat is here to save Jerry from overthinking it.
Sure, but this is also the writer's room notorious for overthinking everything. So it wouldn't surprise me if there actually was an answer to this cat mystery, but the writers are rightfully holding off from revealing it. And I believe that this episode actually gave us all the clues we need to piece together this cat's awful, awful past. Clue number one, the audio of the scan that Rick and Jerry watched. If you listen closely to that sound mixing, you can hear people screaming, general sounds of mayhem, and then this. Yes, that was distinctly the sound of a baby crying, and you can hear it again in the brief second that Jerry watches it. So this cat's past crimes must involve children. But kids aren't the only vulnerable demographic this cat victimizes, told to us by Jerry in the next clue.
He was in my home, where I keep photos of my parents!
So why are Jerry's parents important here? Well, remember the one time we met them, Leonard and Joyce, back in season 1, Jerry's biggest concern about them was what? The fear that they were being exploited in a sexual relationship with Jacob. So keep that mind in the gutter as we move on to clue number 3, Florida, my home state. So why Florida? Why ever Florida? Could there be something to the fact that Florida is a popular state among elderly retirees? Or is it just the fact that the state's known for its reckless sex parties? Sex is definitely on the cat's mind, evidenced by clue number 4.
But do you know what a peanut butter gargoyle is?
Nah, what's that?
Dude, it's when you take the chick, put her feet on a cathedral.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. Just want to clarify. Are these real sex positions? Because if they are, how are they gratifying to the male at all?
Yeah, it's no mystery that this episode on the whole is all about sexual deviance. But the fact that the cat bonds with the dragon in the post-credit scene proves it. And the biggest clue stared at us in the freaking face the whole time. Look at the fur pattern on the cat's nose. Folks, it's in the shape of a dick and balls. Literally on the nose. Now it's interesting to me how the cat's crimes made them vomit. Not too much of the dark shit on this show induces vomiting, but there was one similarly unspeakably dark moment that the show treated the same exact way.
We found it inside a lockbox, inside King Jellybean's closet.
See, whether it's Mr. Jellybean urging to go with the flow, or this cat urging us to not ask questions and just have fun, it all sounds like the same flavor of bad news, folks. So I think that, like Mr. Jellybean, This cat is a freaking rapist, maybe one that targets children and the elderly. This episode and the Mr. Jellybean episode are the only two in the series to visit fantasy-inspired realms, and both realms are sexually violent. And the title of this episode is a pun nod to Law & Order SVU, a series specifically about sex crimes. Maybe this episode of Rick and Morty, the surprise rapist, is a cat. So maybe the cat is the Mr. Jellybean of his dimension. Maybe he's Mr. Jellybean reincarnated. That's why Rick didn't kill it, because he killed Mr. Jellybean before. He sees that same dark evil soul in this cat, and now he wouldn't know which body this sex demon would reincarnate into next. Look folks, I don't like talking about this stuff, but it's real, and it's something that the Rick and Morty writers have addressed before. And when they wrote that Mr. Jellybean episode back in season 1 in the year 2014, the show was still pretty low profile. They probably felt a bit bolder with the kind of jokes they could try to get away with. But the years have gone on, the show has felt that they kind of have to avoid the subject matter as the show's appeal and viewership has widened into the mainstream. That is until now, when they call it out in this episode when Rick participates in a soul orgy with his underage grandkids.
Maybe don't tell your parents we did this.
So is the cat there to mask the sexually violent undertones of this episode? Maybe, maybe not. But if it is, I would not be surprised if the writers just brush it off as a metaphor for overthinking things. And it looks as though this cat could come back in this season's finale, probably gonna air sometime early 2020, based on Rick's line.
Oh, Jesus, your dad's been texting me this whole time? He's at an airport with a cat. Okay, that sounds, wow. You know, I better check on him. Big season finale right there, you know?
But what is your Ricksplanation for the cat? While we're talking about questions and answers, a reminder that New Rockstars has launched a new weekly Q&A series, The Big Question, where you can ask us your nerdiest questions, and we'll apply whatever nerdy laws of physics we remember from grade school to try to answer it. First episode is on the channel now. Go check it out. It's great. And we'll continue this discussion about this episode of Rick and Morty with some special guests after a brief message from our sponsors.
Why do people still go to the post office, especially during the holidays when everyone is trying to send gifts and cards to a loved one or fruitcakes to unloved ones? Anything you can do at the post office, you can do at Stamps.com. Stamps.com eliminates trips to the post office and saves you money with discounts that you can't get at the post office. Here at New Rockstars, we've been using Stamps.com to ship rewards to our Patreon patrons, and it's been super helpful and a big time saver. Keep an eye out for that hot merch blazing up your mailboxes, patrons. Stamps.com brings all the services of the U.S. Postal Service right to your computer. Whether you're a small office sending invoices, an online seller shipping out products, or even a warehouse sending thousands of packages a day, Stamps.com can handle it all with ease. Not to mention, it's a fraction of the cost of expensive postage meters. Stamps.com is a no-brainer, saving you time and money. It's no wonder over 700,000 small businesses already use Stamps.com. Don't spend a minute of your holiday season at the post office this year. Sign up for Stamps.com instead. There's no risk. With my promo code Ricksplained, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Ricksplained. That's Stamps.com, enter Ricksplained. Stamps.com, never go to the post office again. This episode was also brought to you by Hawthorne. Fellas, don't you hate having to buy cologne for yourself? Don't you wish you could just wash your sheets with man musk scents, roll around in them, and wake up ready to get smelled by your coworkers? Smelling good's important. That's why I love Hawthorne. Instead of smelling a bunch of scents in a store until they all smell the same and you have brain damage, Hawthorne has you take a short quiz about your lifestyle and preferences, and then they send you 2 scents, one for work, one for play. They offer this handy quiz that I loved. There's a scale for BO that goes from no BO to painful BO, and to me, all BO is painful because the interior lining of my nose has degraded because it's smelling colognes, not anything else. They also have deodorant, shampoo, and body wash. The whole process is easy and convenient. Best of all, it's totally risk-free with free shipping and free returns. Check out Hawthorne at hawthorne.co. That's Hawthorne with an E, and use my promo code RICK to get 10% off your first purchase. That's HAWTHORNE.co, and use my code RICK to get 10% off your purchase, hawthorne.co. And support for Ricksplained comes from Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Untrimmed pubes are a thing of the past. Whatever the thing was that you held off doing in November, whether it was cutting or nutting, it's December now, so clean it up, boys. It's time to gear up and get yourself a gift of shaving this holiday season. I'm talking about the Manscaped Perfect Package 2.0. Holiday sweaters may be itchy and furry and fun, but they're about the only thing that you'll wear that's furry, itchy, and fun. That's why Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. Their Lawnmower 2.0 has proprietary advanced skin-safe technology, so this trimmer won't nick or snag your nuts. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. The Lawnmower 2.0 comes inside their Perfect Package 2.0, which makes the perfect gift this holiday season. It's literally everything you need to keep trimmed, cut-free, and smelling nice down there. The Manscaped Perfect Package 2.0 includes the Crop Preserver Preserver and the Crop Reviver to keep your balls from sweating, smelling, or sticking, and these products smell good. Their manly scent is attractive and will help set the mood, if you know what I mean. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code Ricksplained at Manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at Manscaped.com when you use the code Ricksplained. You can be a bad Santa without being a bushy Santa.
Morty, what are you doing to me? Jessica. 5 more minutes of this and I'm gonna get mad. Jessica. Not my fault this is happening. How long have you all been eating poop?
We have never eaten poop.
Me neither. Say, where did my family get off to? Run! Run, my baby! Bonus!
Here with us is the voice of Mr. Goldenfold himself, and he's a writer on Rick and Morty and a regular of the Harmontown podcast, R.I.P. Brandon Johnson, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We love having you here. And returning to the show, as always, is new Rockstars Slut Dragon.
Yes.
You told me to write that, Tommy Bechtold.
I like it. I like the way it feels.
We like the way you feel.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the big mystery of this episode, the talking cat.
Yeah.
At the end, it made Jerry and Rick vomit, which is not a common thing to see Rick react that way. And I speculated earlier this episode that his past is so unspeakably obscene, could be connected to like some Mr. Jellybean stuff that the show wants to hint at, but not like explicitly say. Yeah. But I'm curious to know you guys' thought, because clearly this is something that the show left open as a mystery for us to speculate on. What do you guys think they saw in the cat's backstory?
Ooh, you got a good theory?
I mean, I do kind of feel like it's probably a self-immolation, Mr. Hands, Tub Girls, 2 girls, 1 cup compilation. Throwing a little Christmas theme.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you need something to make someone vomit as quickly as possible, you got all your...
I'm trying to think of what are like real vomit triggers for me, you know? And baked beans always make me feel nauseous for some reason.
Okay, that's not code word for a specific internet.
Oh yeah, look up baked beans. You'll never sleep again. No, no, it's just a can of Bush's baked beans. I feel like it's gonna have to be something unspeakable, right?
Yeah.
Like clearly, because they don't do like cheap jokes on that show very much, so it wouldn't be like an old music video or something like that. It's gonna have to be something truly horrific. They really take you through the ringer on that show. Yeah. So like, whatever was watched, I think you had a good story. We were talking off camera, Brandon, about there's a trend of showing disturbing videos and that.
You know, in the writer's room, you can leave blind. And you start to question the people that you work with after we've shared all of this stuff. Because part of it is that you're like, I don't know how you found that, but I also don't know how you suggest another person should see it.
Yeah.
Like, how did you find someone eating their own shit and decide, hey man, this should be archived like in my favorites in the browser of my mind. I'm gonna always have this one ready to go.
I love hearing about that with writers' rooms, how they'll just try to top each other with how dark and they can get with the bits. There was like an old ruling in the 90s, they call it like the Friends rule with sitcom writers, where you can't sue your writer or showrunner based off of the jokes, because it's all just like creative generation, and you need to allow the writers' room to go to those dark places so you know how to rein it in for the episode. And you're now in the room, so like, how do you think an episode like this comes out of conversation?
I am no longer in the room.
Okay.
I visited. I found out that they didn't have the same snacks that I thought I'd signed up for.
I'm out.
Also, I was like, every day?
Wait, this is a job?
Right.
Hold on, wait.
Right. I was like, man, at home, I come up with jokes at like 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then I take a nap. And then I get up at like 7. And then I'm like hilarious again to 7 to 8. But they were like, those aren't our working hours. And I was like, what are the benefits? When do the benefits kick in? And they were like, every day you have to be here for benefits.
Right.
And I was like, that's not how I grew up. So I was, and I have left them to do their tasks, which they do beautifully on a daily basis. It was incredible to be in there. And I think all things spawn episodes. So you can see that they were sort of on a Game of Thrones, Dungeons and Dragons like wave in order to get to this season, in order to get this episode. It's also super crazy because I think Rick and Morty hears its own voice and wants to make fun of itself. So it's great that they went after their fan base.
Right, yeah.
Dragon lovers.
Yeah.
And now you know that dragons are sluts.
Right, yeah.
So, which is also their base. People who masturbate.
I love
there's no sin in that.
Right.
There's no, let's be honest.
Right.
Rick and Morty fans, you probably 10% of you are holding it right now.
Yeah. So that's is it Rule 37, right? There's if something exists, there's porn of it, and there is a very active community of DeviantArt dragon porn that I'm now a proud member of.
Go to any Comic-Con and there's that like weird. You walk down the wrong alley at any comic convention and it's like all the art shifts from like Superman and the Justice League to like Superman and the Thrustus League, and they're just like. It's like, hey, is there ever a character that you didn't think you could sexualize? Well, this man's been doing it for 25 years. Like, here's Chewbacca with 7 penises, and like, it's very disturbing. I think this episode went after its fans in every storyline, because I think the cat storyline also brought up the element of questioning things too much.
Sure, yeah, you're overthinking it, yeah.
And being kind of a know-it-all about stuff, and like, correcting people, and how correction culture just leads to people being like, all right, you've absolutely educated me on this, but I don't want to talk to you anymore. So it isolates us. Where it's like, cool, you can tell me in the comments that I've said 5 wrong things on this, but I'm going to be like, I don't want to hang out with this person. They make me feel bad. Like,
yeah, going through the comments on Twitter, on Reddit, like this seems to be polarizing people this episode. Like everyone understands that the show can get this sexual and this obscene, but it's rattled some people. They're like, oh my God, the sound, the staff.
Yeah, oh God.
I just know it's the staff. Do we think the show can go too far? Or is it just going to like, it might turn off some people, but they can just double down on their hardcore fans who will never turn on them by making increasingly sexually explicit jokes like this.
Well, I think that it's more of a mirror on what makes people uncomfortable. And like, like let's say generalization, like sex tends to be something that makes people uncomfortable, to a certain degree, or they're at least private about. So like, no matter what, we're always going to be a little bit like, oh, wow, I can't believe they did that. Like, even I was like, and trust me, I know a lot about sex. I've tried it a few times. But, like,
ooh, an expert.
Like, even when, like, the staff was, like, jiggling, I was like, ooh, like, but then I like, like, I can still take it in because I'm a tough guy. But, like, I think, like, yeah, people are always going to be a little uncomfortable, but that's more of an internal thing.
He's a big, strong, tough guy.
Yeah, I'm a big, strong man. Like, listen, I drove my car here by myself today.
No.
What?
I made breakfast for myself today. I dressed myself, obviously. Nobody had any input on this. But, yeah, I just think, like, it's always kind of just a mirror on, like, for whatever reason, sex is always going to make people uncomfortable to a certain degree, and then you either are able to push through it and see the episode, or you go kind of blind to it and then go take to the internet and comment on it.
Sure. Yeah. And you had mentioned like the whole idea of eating shit and archiving that. Like Mr. Goldenfold, we found out in the Pickle Rick episode, is at least going to therapy for poop eating. Like as Mr. Goldenfold, you've had some of the best lines of the series. Like how did you come into this role, and do you have any like memories of being in the booth?
My favorite thing is that you get to, when you're this character, you get to make people stay and say things in bars. But usually you're very drunk. So the first season was great, and I'm drunk, and I'm in a bar, and somebody would, I would tell, because nobody can recognize me from the show. It's the first thing I do when I get drunk, because I'm like, you know who you're talking to? Math. But that's how it comes out, because I'm drunk, so I can't even do Goldenfold because I'm too drunk. So this season, I'm able to say to people drunkenly, how long have you been eating poop? And they're like, you don't sound like him. And this is an intervention. So why are you trying to use Goldenfold to get out of rehab? Point is, I came into it because I got lucky. I don't think they knew, I've told this story before, but I'll tell the shortened version. I don't think that they knew I was auditioning, and I didn't know who was doing this show, Rick and Morty. Like, I followed Justin forever. Dan and I are neighbors, drinking buddies, and Justin I have loved since he did this thing for Channel 101 called Mr. Sprinkles. And if you guys get a chance to, I know you guys know it, but if you, in the rest of the world, the universe, if you don't know it, Mr. Sprinkles is amazing. It should be its own show. And I'd always wanted to work with dudes. So when this came around, I was like, yeah, for sure. Go in the booth, do it. I got a teacher in mind that I went to Catholic school. This guy was my teacher, and I was like, if I ever get a chance, I'm going to do this dude's voice. So I go in, I do this dude. He sounds like nobody else, and luckily it worked out.
That's great. And we saw earlier in the clip when he was in the Wasp reality as the caterpillar. How much of that was scripted? You mentioned some of that might have been at least emotionally ad-libbed. Because I love in this show, in the booth, the characters will scream, have mental breakdowns, and like it seems so like real and terrifying and raw. Like how much of that was just your...
It's awful because when somebody says scream, you're like, right? But when somebody's like, no, scream for real. You'll scream and then you'll see people's face in the booth like, what have you been through?
Right.
So the last caterpillar screams are like, they were jarring. Look out. And people were like, good God.
Who hurt you?
You have been hurt and tortured in life. They're so generous with me and Goldenfold. They don't have to write me into the show that much. They don't have to spend that much time drawing. But I think that I have contributed to the best of my abilities so that I'm trying to angle like, hey man, if you guys draw him, I'll make him hilarious. Like if you guys write him in, I'll try to make him as hilarious as possible. And that caterpillar thing, I don't know that was originally in because I saw them adding it later. I'm not quite sure how that went down. But I would walk by it every day and the artists would show it to me. And I knew like once I get in the booth and that thing is actually moving, I'm gonna blow my throat out trying to make, that's what she said. I'm gonna blow my throat out trying to make that thing sound as good as possible. So I was really like, and that's like the last thing that he does. And even when I watch it, I'm like, good God. He sounds like 300 years of slavery after he found out that slaves got freed. What? I've got to work today again. But everyone else is leaving.
These aren't my hours. I need to go back to bed.
We ran out of soap and I've got to wash dirt. I always say there were too many slaves on the plantation. So when you'd run up to dudes and you'd be like, what do you do? Like, man, I'm the one who makes the dirt dirtier. I'm the washer. What do you do? Well, I wash this and then I wash it again. Too many.
Oh, man.
Too many people working on this plantation.
Well, there was an HR then, so unfortunately you couldn't really.
And that's the only reason it was bad is if we just had HR to
if we could have just
rein
brought
them
in some people to put some ramifications.
This is why
around.
every company needs an HR department because otherwise slavery is going to happen.
Right.
You just start actually,
True.
in a way, yeah, it is kind of
It's
true.
true though. It's true.
Every episode devolves into a whole Marxist thing. You know? Anyway, well, this has been so great. I hate to cut off here because it seems like we're censoring, but we're just out of time. It's been
as soon as the black guy talks about slavery, we're out of time.
And I haven't made my argument about the police yet. Hang on. We're desperately out of time.
And coming out of that technical difficulties, you didn't miss anything. You didn't miss anything. We're all just a couple years older internally. Brandon, thank you so much for coming on this show. It's been so great chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
We love hearing your voice in the show. We look forward to hearing it much, much more.
Me too.
Yeah. Write him in. Keep writing in, Mr. Goldenfold. It's the best recurring character. And Tommy, as always,
thank you for having me.
You were here.
Yes.
And thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. We'll be back next week to break down the mid-season finale, or episode 5, whatever it's going to be. And we'll also be doing Easter egg breakdowns of all the inner jokes that you might have missed. And make sure to subscribe to Ricksplained. That's our podcast feed. Let's help us beat Ellen, or at least the other Rick and Morty after shows that exist. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll close out with our favorite joke of this episode.
You know who's into dragons, Morty? Nerds that refuse to admit they're Christian.